Today we are reading chapter 9. In the afternoon, Timothy said we'd make a rope. On the north end of the island, tough vines, almost as large as a pencil, were laced over the sand. It took us several hours to tear out a big pile of them. Then Timothy began weaving a rope that would stretch all the way down the hill to the beach and fire pile. The rope was for me. If he happened to be out on the reef and I heard a plane, I could take a light from our campfire, follow the rope down, and touch off the big fire. The vine rope would also serve to get me safely down to the beach. After we'd torn the vines out and he was weaving the rope, he said, "Young boss, you must begin to help with the other work." We were sitting up by the hut. I had my back to a palm and was thinking that back in Williamstead at this moment, I'd probably be sitting in a classroom 3 desks away from Henrik, listening about European history. I'd be tutored in Dutch the first year in Williamstead, so I could attend the regular school. Now I could speak it and understand it. My hands were tired from pulling the vines, and I just wanted to sit and think. I didn't want to work, I said. "Timothy, I'm blind. I can't see to work." I heard him cutting something with his sharp knife. He replied softly, "The hand is not blind." Didn't the old man understand? To work, aside from pulling up vines or drawing something in the sand, you must be able to see. Stubbornly, he said, "Young boss, we need sleeping mats. You can make the mats." I looked over in his direction. "You do it," I said. He sighed back, saying, "The best mat maker in Charlotte Amalie, down in Frenchtown, be total blind. But he's a man, and he has to do that to make a living." "Be true," Timothy said quietly. But in a few minutes he placed several lengths of palm fiber across my lap. He really was a mule. The palm mat is very easy. Just over and under, over and under. Becoming angry with him, I said, "I tell you, I cannot see." He paid no attention to me. "Take this hand, hold the palm like this, then over and under, like the man in Frenchtown, then more palm." I could feel him standing there watching me, and I tried to weave the lengths, but I knew they weren't fitting together. He said, "Like this, I tell you," and reached down to guide my hand. Over and under, over and under. I tried again, but it didn't work. I stood up, threw the palm fibers in his direction, and screamed, "You ugly man! I won't do it. You're stupid. You can't even spell." Timothy's heavy hand struck my face sharply. Stunned, I touched my face where he'd hit me, then I turned away from where I thought he was. My cheeks stung, but I wouldn't let him see me with tears in my eyes. I heard him saying very gently, "Be getting back to work my own self." I sat down again. He began to sing that fungi and fish song in a low voice, and I could picture him sitting on the sand in front of the hut. That tangled gray hair, that ugly black face with the thick lips, those great big hands winding the strands of vine. The rope, I thought, it wasn't for him, it was for me. After a while I said, "Timothy." He did not answer, but walked over to me, pressing more palm fronds into my hands. He murmured, "'Tis very easy. Over and under, over and under. Then he went back to singing about fungi and fish. Something happened to me that day on the quay. I'm not quite sure what it was even now, but I began to change. I said to Timothy, I'm sorry. I want to be your friend. He said softly, Young boss, you have always been my friend. I said, can you call me Philip instead of young boss? Philippe, he said warmly. Chapter 10. During our seventh night on the island, it rained. It was one of those tropical storms that comes up swiftly without warning. We were asleep on the palm mats that I'd made, but it awakened us immediately. The rain sounded like bullets hitting on the dried palm frond roof. We ran out into it shouting and letting the fresh water hit our bodies. It was cool and it felt good. Timothy yelled that his catchment was working. He had taken more boards from the top of the raft and had made a large trough that would catch the rain. He picked up bamboo lengths on the beach and had fitted them together in a short pipe to funnel the rainwater into our 10-gallon keg. It rained for almost 2 hours, and Timothy was quite angry with himself for not making a second catchment because the keg was soon filled and overflowing. We stayed out in the cool rain for 20 or 30 minutes and then went back inside. The roof leaked badly, but we didn't mind. We got on our mats and opened our mouths to the sweet fresh water. Stu Cat was huddled in a miserable ball over in the corner. Timothy said, not enjoying it at all. I liked the rain because it was something I could hear and feel, not something I must see. It peppered in bursts against the frond roof, and I could hear the drips as it leaked through. The squall wind was in the tops of the palms, and I could imagine how they looked in the night sky, thrashing against each other high over our little cay. I wanted it to rain all night. We talked for a long time when the rain began to slack off. Timothy asked me about my mother and father. I told him all about them and about how we lived in Scarloo, getting very lonesome and homesick while I was telling him. He kept saying, ah, that be true? Then Timothy told me what he could remember from his own childhood. It wasn't at all like mine. He'd never gone to school and was working on a fishing boat by the time he was 10. It almost seemed the only fun he had had was once a year at carnival when he'd put leaves around his ankles and dress up in a donkey hide to parade around with Mocky Jumbies, the spirit chasers, while the old ladies of Charlotte Amalie danced around them. He chuckled, I drink plenty of rum those 3 days of carnival. I could picture him in his donkey skin, wheeling around to the music of the steel bands. They had them in Willemstad, too. Because it had been on my mind, I told him that my mother didn't like black people, and I asked him why. He answered slowly, I don't like some white people my own self, but 'twould be outrageous if I didn't like any of them. Wanting to hear it from Timothy, I asked him why there were different colors of skin. White and black, brown and red. He laughed back. Why be fish different color? Or flower be different color? I true don't know, Philippe, but I true think beneath the skin is all the same. Here, Jonkineer had said something like that in school, but it didn't mean quite as much as when Timothy said it to me. I learned a lot that day, a lot of important things that my mom or dad never taught me. Long after he'd begun to snore in the dripping hunt, I thought about it. Suddenly, I wished my father and mother could see us there together on this little island. I moved close to Timothy's big body before I went to sleep. I remember smiling in the darkness. He felt neither white nor black to me anymore. In the morning, the air was crisp and the CAY smelled fresh and clean. Timothy cooked a small fish, a pompano, that he'd speared at dawn before down on the reef. Neither of us had felt so good or so clean since we had been aboard the Hado, and without discussing it, we both thought this might be the day an aircraft would swing up into the Devil's Mouth, if that's where we were. The pompano, broiled over the low fire, tasted good. Of course, we were eating little but what came from the sea: fish, langosta, mussels, or the eggs from sea urchins, those small black round sea animals with sharp spines that attach themselves to the reefs. Timothy had tried to make a stew from seaweed, but it tasted bitter. Then he tried to boil some sea grape roots, but they made us ill. The only thing that ever worked for him was sea grape leaves, boiled first in seawater and then cooked in fresh water. But above us, 40 feet from the ground, Timothy said, was a feast. Big, fat, green coconuts. When we landed, when we'd landed, there were a few dried ones on the ground, but the meat in them was not very tasty. In a fresher one, there was still some milk, but it was rancid. At least once a day, especially when we were around the hut, Timothy would say, "'Tis outrageous dem coconut hang up in de sky when we could use de milk and de meat." Or he'd say, "Timothy, my own self, long ago could climb de palm very easy." Or hinting, and I guess looking up at them, "Philippe, I do believe you be gettin' outrageous strong 'ere on de island." He made a point of saying that if he were only 50 again, he would climb the tree and slice them off with his knife. But at 70 odd, he did not think he could make it to the top. That morning over breakfast, Timothy said, looking to the tops of the palms, "I'm sure a little milk from de coconut would be good now, eh, Philippe?" As yet, I didn't have the courage to climb the palms. "Yes, it would," I said. Timothy cleared his throat, sighed deeply, and put the coconuts out of his mind. But I knew he'd try me again. He said, "Dem devilin' coconuts aside, your mother would never be knowin' you now." I asked why. "You are very brown and very lean," he said. I tried to imagine how I looked. I knew my shirt and pants were in tatters. My hair felt ropey. There was no way to comb it. I wondered how my eyes looked and asked Timothy about that. "They look without cease," he said. "They stare, Philippe." "Do they bother you?" Timothy laughed. "Not me. Every day I think what rare good luck I have that you be here with my own self and this outrageous humbug island." I thought a while and then asked him, "How long was it before the friend of yours that friend in Barbados could see again? Timothy replied vaguely. Oh, many months, I do recall. But you told me on the raft it was only 3 days. Did I say that? Yes. Well, Timothy said, 'twas a long time ago, but he got his sight back to be true. He paused a moment, then said, now I tell you, we got much work to do today. I noticed more and more that Timothy always changed the subject when we began to talk about my eyes. He would make any kind of an excuse. What work? I asked. Now, let me see, he said. For one thing, we must make another catchment, and we must go to the reef for food. And I waited. Timothy finally exploded. Now that is a lot of work, Philippe, to be true. And that was the end of chapter 10. Tomorrow we will read chapter 11.